the BBC World Service in association with ABC and All India Radio. This is Stumped.
Hello and welcome to Stumped, your intercontinental hit of news, features and debate from the quirky world of cricket. I'm Alison Mitchell in Melbourne, and a few days on from India's extraordinary history-making win at the Gabba, well, the country is reflecting on what that means for its own cricket team. Attention on this city, though, is also turning towards the Australian Open tennis, and players who have flown in from all over the world have their noses pressed up to the glass in quarantine hotel rooms after being put behind closed doors for 14 days to protect the Victorian public and stop COVID cases getting into the community. And the city has done so well after its 7-month lockdown, so you'd certainly hope that anyone coming into this country will respect what it takes to keep the country and the state virtually COVID-free.
Hi, it's Jim Maxwell for the ABC in Sydney. I'm still sort of shaking my head, not just because Australia managed to lose the series, but because it was the most stunning test match series we've ever seen. And India did it all without Kohli, without Bumrah, without quite a few people, and a few new stars came along. The best line, that's come out of all this is that Kohli can stay at home now and produce more babies because they don't need him.
This is Charu Sharma for All India Radio in Bangalore. I'm going to give you 3 seconds to hear the sound. It's the euphoria still rippling around India. The Gabba tour has been silenced by a most unlikely set of unheralded heroes. And all of India, even the peripheral cricket fan, is busy recirculating stories of new stars with extremely humble beginnings getting the better of the mighty Australians. Again, mind you, after 2 years. So for the moment, we'll have to say that Indian cricket can be pictured like, how about a satiated tiger?
I have to say, for the fact that Australia, when they won the Border Gavaskar Trophy in Australia last time round, it was the first time they'd ever done it on Australian soil. So to then come here and repeat the feat, given all those circumstances that Jim highlighted, well, it's obviously where we're starting the show this week. Although we do have England's latest Test debutant Dan Lawrence joining us later on in the show. That was after he starred with the bat-on debut in Sri Lanka. But let's focus on Brisbane, where after 33 years, Australia's fortress, the Gabba was finally breached.
Hazelwood goes in and he gets a full toss and he drives it through mid-off. It's going down towards the boundary. It's going to go for 4. It's all over. India have won. India have won magnificently. You could say this is one of the greatest wins India have ever had in their Test history.
Yes, that was the 4 from Rishabh Pant that secured India a record run chase of 328 in Brisbane as they won the series 2-1 to retain the Border Gavaskar Trophy. And to just say that they won the series doesn't even do the feat justice. There are so many elements that have gone into this story, and we'll get into all of that in detail in a moment. But here's the reaction of India's stand-in captain, Ajinkya Rahane, in the immediate aftermath.
I'm really proud of all the boys. Shown character, attitude, especially after Adelaide Test match. We decided that we are going to fight really hard. We know Australia, they're a very dangerous team, and we just wanted to give our best, not to think about results. But yeah, as I said, that I don't know how to describe this victory. Really proud of each and every individual.
Well, we heard Jim just then call it as one of India's greatest ever Test wins. Is it their greatest ever? I asked that question to the former India captain, Sunil Gavaskar.
When you have different eras and you have players being called the greatest, when the past is forgotten because, the present is in front of us, I would like to think that this definitely is amongst the top Indian wins. In 1971, when we beat West Indies for the first time ever in a test match, and then because of that win, we won the series in the West Indies, and beating England, an England team which had just won the Ashes and which had just, returned to England. Those 2 wins were massive wins as well. And this win is a massive win as well, super massive win. So I would imagine that this would fit in amongst those 3 wins.
I have to say that Sonny was genuinely moved by that victory. And I'm sure, Jim, that I heard emotion in Chappell's voice as well. Someone else who has just watched, like yourself, so many years and years of cricket, been there, done that. And yet this was such an extraordinary feat. It was really wonderful to hear that emotion. And of course, the trophy named after Sunny Gavaskar as well. Charu, for you, India's greatest Test victory?
Well, I don't wish to sound a discordant note and sound churlish, but, where Indian cricket now stands this is probably not going to be classified as the greatest victory because Indian cricket's robust, it's vibrant, it's not what it was in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s when wins were very tough and Indian cricket was only evolving and growing. So I agree with Sunny. I think those wins in the 70s really changed India's outlook towards cricket. But it is a massive win, without doubt, a stunning win, hugely unexpected as well. And while Australia, Alison, is always going to be justifiably viewed as a Goliath, the Indians are no longer Davids wherever they go. I mean, they're a pretty strong, big, tough bunch of cricketers. So to me, it classifies as one of the most dramatic, stunning, heroic test victories. Perhaps not the greatest, but of course it does come against the world's best hostile fast bowling attack. So it's a very special win, no doubt, and came out of the blue, out of nowhere. I was wondering on that final day, are they going to try and go for a draw? Oh boy, it's going to be tough. But to win 320 and change, fantastic.
Well, that's it. I mean, Jim, is it about ranking it amongst the greatest test matches of all time, or is it about looking at the series as a whole? When you think back of sort of great test wins, where do you think this one sits?
I think there's an evolving story here that's been going for a while about Indian cricket. And I think the IPL has probably got a bit to do with what we're seeing with the development of the side, despite the fact that they didn't field their best 11 and they were clearly humiliated in the first test when they were bowled out for 36. So they are becoming more and more of a power as they develop a lot of players who are good enough at this level, like Gill, who came through. Yes, we'd seen Pant before, but he really did express himself. And Thakkar and Sundar, who came into the side. I don't think I've ever seen a more inexperienced bowling attack for a test match, other than the debut test match of any nation. I think we're going to see a continued development of India as a powerhouse, not just in terms of their commercial might and ability to run a very successful IPL tournament, but as a nation that can play cricket at the level no one else can play. And I think we could be entering a period in the next few years where India continued to dominate at home and away.
And what of the stand-in captain, Ajinkya Rahane? It was notable when the winning runs were hit. He was almost motionless in the dugout as some of those younger players streamed onto the field. And then at the trophy lift, he took something of a back seat. He's a very understated character compared to Virat Kohli, but obviously highly respected and is a leader of men.
Without question. What a story there, though, Alison and Jim, because the personality of a captain, how much of a difference does it make to the team? Kohli and Rahane are complete opposites. And every time India wins under Kohli, people say, wow, look at the aggressive leadership. And that's what India needs. And that's what the new India needs. And that's what India is all about. And then Rahane, with his completely opposite, understated ways, wins test matches for India as well as the captain. And people say, oh, wow, what a humble character. So what is the truth here? Who wins? What kind of character wins matches for India? I think ultimately it's your batting ability that a team really cares about, if you're a batsman and captain. And Ajinkya, of course, did extremely well in that second test match to bring India back into winning ways. So the respect really perhaps is not so much for his humility and his understated ways, but the fact that he held his own, got India back on the batting track in that second test match. And he is the kind of captain that I personally, of course, appreciate because he lets people be and saying, all right, you do your best. I trust you. I appreciate that. We'll have to presume that the players appreciate it too.
Can you see any scenario, though, where Rahane becomes full-time test captain and Kohli drops into the ranks to focus on being a batting superstar?
Well, that can only happen if Kohli voluntarily abdicates. If he says, all right, take it. But I don't think Kohli is going to appreciate this kind of line of thought at all or such a scenario because he is, out and out, that whole leader. Rahane will, I think, forever remain a stand-in captain. There could be a call here now saying, why don't you make him a permanent captain and get rid of Kohli's pressures? But Kohli has never admitted to pressure. So I don't think there's going to be any such call. Kohli will come right back into his spot and Rahane will very quietly move away into the vice-captaincy spot and just say, well, it's okay. I'm happy here.
Well, let's turn our focus to Australia. I mean, we did discuss on last week's show, didn't we, about Tim Paine and then the question of, well, but if not Tim Paine, who else? And there's the Steve Smith question. There's Pat Cummins as vice-captain, but he's also your main strike bowler and you don't want to burden him. Is it a case then of if Payne is a good leader of men, but he's not a great tactician, do you keep Payne as leader, but you really look for more support, tactically wise, from whether it's Steve Smith? How should that dynamic work?
Well, it's hard to have a team captain by committee. I mean, he's got players like Warner and Smith and his bowling group. They can give him a lot of advice, but in the end, he's got to have the anticipation and the tactical nous. And it's hard for a wicketkeeper because he's so much involved in his own game, and maybe that's why wicketkeepers traditionally haven't been captains. And I think he's done an excellent job. But it's a kind of interregnum in Australian cricket, almost caretaker until the next bloke comes along. Now, that is a big question. Who is the next person? I personally think that after the series against South Africa and the final of the World Championship, whatever you want to call it, if Australia gets there, Payne might just decide to go off into the distance anyway. But it begs the question, and we're going to keep throwing it out there, who's next? Do you go back to Smith or do you go to Cummins? Or someone else.
The one thing which I think we've all taken from the extraordinary events at the Gabba is, in the words of Justin Langer, because he was hurting after that defeat, make no mistake, but he did declare that Test cricket is alive and well.
From the BBC World Service, this is Stumped on All India Radio.
We're next on Stumped to a man who starred on his Test debut for England against Sri Lanka.
Pereira to Lawrence on 49. Lawrence clips this up towards long on. There's no mid on in. It's an easy single, and Lawrence gets exactly what he was looking for, a maiden half century.
Well, let's speak to the man himself. Dan Lawrence joins us on Stumped. Dan, welcome all the way from Gaul.
Hi there, you're right.
We are very well. It's great to speak to you. A first innings 50 and then that battling innings to secure England a victory. Quite the debut must have been, well, for you, I suppose you've passed your first test, if you like.
Yeah, it was a really enjoyable week. It's already a little bit of a blur to me, to be honest, because I was enjoying it so much.
What feedback and response have you had from family back home?
Well, I got off the field after I got my first 50, and I'd realised that every member of my family had been on the radio, which was news to me until I found out. Obviously, everyone was very happy, and it was lovely to find out how many people at home were actually putting the early shift in and getting up and watching.
Jim Maxwell here. Well done on your debut. Your brother David is a wrestler known as David Reckham. So I sense there's a confident streak in the family.
Yeah, he's been loving his wrestling ever since he was a little boy. So because from where we're both from, Chinkford, David Beckham was born there, or born in the same hospital as us, and then lived in the same area. So yeah, I don't know how he's come up with David Reckham, but it seemed to get a little bit of love this week. So he's very happy. And yeah, it's brilliant. He's a really good performer. I've been and watched him a couple of times, and it's definitely something to behold.
Hi, Dan. This is Charu Sharma from Bangalore, not too far from where you are. Listen, your average against spin is 63 in first-class cricket. So are we now happy to presume that you'll actually welcome subcontinental conditions and welcome the spin here?
That was obviously different to anything that I'd ever played on before, especially in the second innings. It was really dry and really dusty, and it was hard to survive. I've said previously that with England cricket now, we're so fortunate that if you're not actually in the main squad, you still have the opportunities to go abroad and go to Asia and practice there on these spin camps that we do. And I feel like we went to Mumbai last year, and that put me in a great place, learning how to play all types of spin really, and just trying to be confident whilst playing it, because I understand there is going to be challenges this winter. And as long as the game plan is sort of half solid, then I shouldn't go too far wrong.
Well, England, of course, now travel to India, and we look forward to welcome you here in these conditions. Have you had a chance to study the likes of Ashwin and Kuldeep Yadav and whichever other tricky spinner may play for India against you?
Well, obviously in the past, I'm quite a big cricket watcher, so I've obviously seen them in action a lot from watching them bowl in India and outside of India. To be honest, I'm just trying to take it game by game at the moment. All I'm focusing on is trying to do well in this second Test match, and then what will be after that. And if I ever do get the opportunity against India, then I'm sure I'll come up with some sort of a plan by then.
You talked about going on those sort of development trips with England. Does this competition for places really keep you all on your toes and keeping an eye out for every opportunity? Yeah,
definitely. I think it's a really good situation to be in. I'm fully aware that A few of the big boys are coming back, and that's why I say all I'm trying to do is focus on my next game, hopefully score some runs, and then what will be, and try not to look too far ahead and think about selection for other series and stuff like that. Just try and enjoy it whilst I'm here and see what happens.
So that's England's newest Test debutant, Dan Lawrence. Jim, England-wise, it's been a great start to the year for the team with that win, although Sri Lanka didn't look strong. But England, well, it means a lot of players are getting a lot of experience ahead of what's going to be a very busy year.
It's fantastic. And we've seen a little bit of Dan Lawrence in the BBL here. So we've got an idea that he's a pretty good player, and it'd be no surprise if he was a feature next summer. But nothing wrong with a bit of competition. Australia would like to have the same in their middle order at the moment. Yeah. So that's a very healthy sign for England as they move forward.
Oh, Charu, what of Sri Lanka, though? Because before this England series, they just suffered 2 heavy Test defeats in South Africa. Are they simply a team in transition, or are their struggles going deeper than that?
Well, I think the latter, because we've been using the term transition for too long now for Sri Lankan cricket, and I'm going to have to switch to maybe disarray or downslide. In the world of cricket, we could use a consistently higher level of competition among the few teams that play Test cricket anyway. I do think Sri Lanka are going through a phase where they have no heroes. There's no Sri Lankan cricketer in the upper echelons of the cricket ranking. They've got no star bowlers or batsmen, nothing for the youngsters to aspire to become. All the heroes have now retired. I think some desperate measures are certainly called for. It's mind-boggling why they're not producing cricketers of higher caliber, because they're losing far too often enough. They begin losing at home as well. I think countries would just be a little more reluctant to tour to Sri Lanka or play against Sri Lanka.
Well, that's it for this week's Stumped on All India Radio. You can stay in touch with us on Twitter via @BBCWS Sports and use the hashtag BBC Stumped. Thanks to my co-hosts Charu Sharma and Jim Maxwell, and to you for listening. Join us again next time. Bye-bye.
Stumped is a BBC sport production for the BBC World Service in association with the Australian Broadcasting Corporation and All India Radio.